In this video, we'll look at adjustment layers that apply specifically to color changes in photographs, such as vibrance, hue saturation, color balance, and black and white, as well as the photo filter adjustment layer. While we are playing around with these, we will also look into how layer masks can be used to have a little bit more of a hand or a say in which areas of the photograph we manipulate. We'll start with vibrance. Oops. And I always like to copy my background just in case I want to do something on the background layer later. So I've clicked vibrance. This is popped up here, and these are pretty self-explanatory. The more vibrant an image is, the more intense the colors get. So if you want to kind of increase the chroma or the intensity of your color, you can bump up the vibrance. A look that's in right now is just kind of slightly desaturated photographs. So saturation does something similar. It brings, if I brought the saturation all the way down, it would be black and white. So if you bring down the vibrance and saturation, you can kind of get that more antique-y look to your photographs. You can still bring the vibrance down, saturation up, and play around with these combinations to get your desired look. Just like any adjustment layer, if you like what you've done, but you want it a little bit less intense, or to add bits of the background photo back in, you can play with your opacity here. You can also play with your blending modes. So this group darkens, this group here tends to lighten your photograph in different ways, and these ones kind of do a combination, whereas these last group of 4 do a little bit funkier things. So know that you have many options between the opacity and then the blending modes of your layer. You can also uncheck that to see what it looked like before. So that was hue and saturation. We'll go into color balance. I'm going to delete the vibrance for now, just so I don't end up with a bunch of these. If I ever need to see what I've done, just double click and your dialog box will pop back up. So this allows me to intensify one color over another color. So cyan and red are paired, magenta and green, and yellow and blue are paired. If you want to warm a composition up, you can move your toggle switches towards the warmer color. And then consequently, if you want to kind of cool an image down, you can move your toggle switches towards the cooler colors here. You don't have to move all of them. But if I wanted, this was a pretty warm photograph. We had the yellow grass and the red dwarf. I wanted to bring out some of the subtle blues that were in the stone. I could set this to 0. And then bring out the blue like that. Again, I liked it, but not all the way. Bring it back down just to bring out a little bit of that. And I could also play with my blending modes as well. Delete that one. We have black and white here. And click that. I like using the black and white adjustment layer a lot better than I like going image, adjustments, black and white. One, because it is non-destructive, so I can always delete this. I can play with the opacity. I can uncheck the visibility. I can do whatever I want with it, and I'm not destructing any pixels in the original background. And another reason is because it allows me to have a lot of control over the tints, tones, and shades of each color. So if I forgot about my black and white layer here for a second, and remembered what colors were in my composition. There's yellows here, reds here, etc. When I click that back on, if you look at where the reds are in the photograph, so that door, I can bring just those values down or those values up. So I really have a hand in being able to edit the range of values within each part of my composition. So won't go into that anymore, but it's a really, really nice way to be able to customize your black and white photo. Let's say, I'm going to delete this. We'll talk about layer masks for a second. I wanted black and white on everywhere else but the red of this door. So my first task would be to select all of the red areas. I could do that with a variety of selection tools. We have the lasso tool, anything that you've learned previously, the magic wand tool, the quick selection tool. I'm going to use the magic wand tool. And the lower the tolerance you set, so the closer to 1 you set, the pickier Photoshop is about choosing pixels that are the same color. If you bump this up, I believe it goes to 120 or 150, and that will select pixels that are kind of, you know, like the color, but not exactly. Again, I always do a 3x3 average here. So I'll just kind of select, and if I want to keep selecting, so for instance, if I clicked over here to add this to my selection, it wouldn't do it. I would need to click this button here. So add to selection up the top left. So I just kind of use my magic wand tool until everything I want to select is selected. For time's sake, I'm not going to do this perfectly. Of course, if you're editing your own photograph, you have more time. So, almost done here. Good. What I'll do with this is, once I'm happy with my selection, I'll turn it into a layer mask. So like I said, not a perfect selection, but it'll do. If I want to clean some of this up, I can go into my magic wand tool. Let's say I want to erase some of it, or I can switch from my magic wand tool rather to my quick selection tool. Make this larger with the minus, and then brush some of that I don't want to be included away. Alright, this should be good enough. So, there's a few different ways I could do this. I could go up to refine edge and then select different outputs, new layer with layer mask, etc. But for now, I'm just going to press the layer mask button down here. And my selection went away, but if I look at my layer panel over here, the layer mask has been added, and my selection has been included in that. So this time I want to change the area to black and white. Actually, I'm going to undo this now that I'm thinking about it, Control Z, and I want everything but the red selected. If I want to keep the red showing, I would want to go select up here and then say inverse. So now everything else but the red, hopefully, is selected. So now I'll hit the layer mask, and kind of got to think ahead to your what you want as your output, and I'll click black and white. Now, as I have it right here, this layer mask is not linked, or this adjustment layer rather with the layer mask is not linked to my background copy with the layer mask. So I'll need to create a clipping mask by holding Alt and hovering my mouse right between the two layers. And then when I click here, my selection shows up. So I can also change what's colored on my layer mask, or make changes to my layer mask by clicking here on the background copy and choosing a brush. Let's see, I want to bring some more red out. I can click and paint right on there. So just like you do, or you have in other projects using layer masks, you can use your selection tool if you want, to just get those red areas. Or you can come in with a small brush, switch up the opacity if you want to, change the hardness of your brush if you'd like. You can go ahead and really refine this. The nice thing too about this, which you've learned by now, is that if you accidentally make a mistake, you can flip to white, the foreground color, and then just go ahead and patch it up. So non-destructive editing at its finest. And keep in mind that you don't have to just do this with the black and white adjustment layer. You can do this with any adjustment layer that you see up here. Another quick note about clipping masks before we move on. Let's say I wanted to adjust the curves of this image right here. If I wanted to adjust the curves of the whole thing, I would leave this as is. Could take my sampling tool to sample different curves and levels within my image, get it just so, or however I wanted it, and that applies, this adjustment that I made applies to the whole image. But let's say I just wanted to adjust what I had just edited, so that selective color. I would hold down Alt, hover between the two layers, and then click. And if you see that change, my curves only stayed, my adjustment layer, my curves only stayed on the door. So you can always unclip, applying your adjustment layer to your whole photograph, or if you've made selections, if you've made layer masks that indicate you want changes made to only certain parts of your photograph, you can also link those, you can link new changes to those existing selections. So we're just going to talk about a couple more things before we move on here. I'll just delete those really quickly. I'll delete my layer mask. So we can talk about photo filters. Click photo filter. This is pretty self-explanatory. I can choose warm filters. These numbers and letters here indicate ones that exist in traditional lab-based photography. So these numbers you could find and use with a traditional camera and then develop things in a dark room. You can also just choose colors that Photoshop has pre-picked. I can double click, or I can click on color here. Oops. Click on color, and then customize my filter as well. So if I wanted to make this warmer, but I didn't quite like what Photoshop already gave me, I could say OK. The density just allows you to manipulate the intensity of the filter, so how much of the filter that you see. Preserve luminosity, that preserves the tints, tones, and shades, so the range of values that's already in your photograph. I would recommend clicking Preserve Luminosity. Another way that you can use layer masks to your advantage is each selection or adjustment layer comes with a layer mask, and if I want to manually get rid of this adjustment from some areas but not others, I click on my layer mask, use my brush, decide what I want my opacity to be, and then paint that adjustment away. You do it a little bit more gracefully or seamlessly than what I'm doing now, but the idea is there. Don't stop thinking about layer masks through this photo editing process, because they can help a lot. In our next section, we will go over gradients and how to use them in the photo editing process.